Alrighty, we are here with Kordel France, founder of Theta Diagnostics, one of the companies that is really shaking up the AI and robotic space. And I know there's like a billion trillion companies that say that these days, but we're going to talk about robots and senses, which I think is pretty cool, and all sorts of other things. But Kordel, thank you so much for joining. How you doing today?
Doing well, Max. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to your listeners in advance.
Yeah, of course. I think not as many guests thank the listeners right away. So thank you for thanking. And now we're having a full thank off here. But no,
Perfect.
excited to get to all you're doing in the robot space. But before that, AI is obviously everywhere these days. The last time that we had a guest that was like really focused, like blogging all this stuff on AI, was actually back in episode 98. So it's been a bit. Janelle Shane, AI Weirdness. And that was talking about just like all the weird quirks of AI at the time. And now, obviously, there's still a lot of quirks with AI, but now it's like there's this crazy, seemingly revolution of like all the applications of AI. So, would love to hear from your origin story. What was the first time that you even heard or like came across this term of artificial intelligence?
The first time I came across the term of artificial intelligence was I was in sixth grade, I think. So a long time ago, but up until then, it was robotics for me. And my first exposure to robotics was when I was just a toddler. So I actually grew up on a farm, and my father had some software that he put onto our tractors that allowed them to steer themselves. And so there's no human interaction. You're just basically sitting in the seat, right? So as a kid, as a toddler, that's something out of a sci-fi movie. You're seeing this big machine act on its own and move on its own. And I kept asking my dad, I'm like, how do I work on this? How do I contribute to this, as a kid? And he said, you got to be good at math, right? You got to be good at stats and look at all these things for robotics. And so that was the accelerant for me to kind of get into AI and get into robotics. Actually started from agriculture, which is kind of funny. But yeah, from there, I feel like the definition of AI changes as time goes on, but I first got exposed to the term probably in sixth grade.
So you started out literally farming AI. Not
Yeah,
many people can say that.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Of those aspects of like math and statistics and all physics, even I don't even know all those arms of, I guess, STEM, we'll call it, that branch up into AI. Which one of those is like your bread and butter?
I'd say it's a combination of statistics and physics. I think, well, if you look at artificial intelligence, it's really all built on mathematics and statistics and computer science principles. Those are the three things that really construct artificial intelligence at the most fundamental level. If you incorporate some physics and some engineering, then you get robotics, which is more of a hardware type thing. AI is kind of like the brain, robotics is kind of like the hardware in the body. And so having a good mechanical engineering or physics background allows you to merge both AI and the robotics realms together quite well to constitute higher level intelligence. So I'd say my bread and butter is probably statistics and physics.
So here we are. We've already talked farms. We've already talked bread and butter. I'm ready to go to Cracker Barrel and celebrate this. But before
Amen.
we, the best apple butter, as my wife says. But anyway, let's get to robotics. So this is something you spent a lot of time on. Obviously, overlaps, intersects with AI as well. That sounds like a whole different thing. But where did you start to get the idea that I could actually like start a business or like have a career in this space surrounded by robots?
So it's kind of a long answer, but we started a company, my co-founder and I started a company called Seeker Technologies back in 2018. And we were focused on building AI models that ran on the device. So no connection to the cloud, which back then was a little bit harder of a problem than it is now. Because you have these big AI models that take up a lot of space and compute power. It's very hard to compress them to put them on the device. So we started a company around that, and we were quite successful for a while. But as the general field started getting more and more advanced, and that problem, running AI models on device, became less of a problem, we started looking at other aspects of AI and robotics that might not have had as much of an investment as a moat. And we really wanted to contribute to artificial general intelligence, if you've heard that word, which is basically there's several different definitions of it, but for lack, or for the sake
We're going
of
to make
time-
you list off every definition one by one here.
All right, perfect. Let's schedule for like maybe another 2.5 hours because there's so much debate about it. In my mind, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is human level intelligence. And if you think about how to build that, human level intelligence is largely, in my mind, all five senses. I don't think you can have human level intelligence if you don't have all five senses. And there's folks that might not have as acute sense of in one direction or the other, but their other senses are magnified because of the lack of sense that they might not have. But for the sake of this conversation, you need all five senses for human level intelligence. You could argue that if you're in Paris and you're sitting outside the Eiffel Tower and you're eating a crepe, you don't get the same experience that you get if you can't smell the baguettes being baked in the background and you're hearing the passersby as they talk French as they walk by, right? Like you kind of need all of those senses to build up an experience that constitutes intelligence. And we're looking around at the other senses that weren't getting as much investment or attention. So computer vision, hearing, audio learning, speech processing, text recognition, all that stuff, we're getting a lot of investment, a lot of attention. There's a lot of really smart researchers in those fields. But the sense of smell wasn't getting as much of attention. And so in order to kind of build our mode as a startup, we dove more into this and saw that there's just not as much advancements in the field of machine smell, or machine olfaction as it's technically called. And we just really dove in from there and started building out a sensing technology and focusing our AI platform around that.
And as you're talking through that, I can smell the crepes. Like there's nothing that compares to a good crepe smell, especially in the Paris. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but smell is fascinating. I'm sure we've all heard all sorts of stats of like how it's the most tied to your memory, and it's like and maybe you know some of them. There's like some crazy high amount of smells that your brain can distinguish. Like there's all sorts of crazy stuff there. But how do you start to tackle this? Like the thought of combining smell and machines is truly something out of this world. Like it seems too futuristic to be true, but like you're doing it and you're experimenting with it. Like how do you start to tackle this big hairy meatball, as people say?
So that's a good question. We took the first thing we did is looked at the state of the art and tried to figure out what sensing techniques are available and what are the pain points people are expressing, or why has the field not advanced to the same state as vision or audio or anything else. And a few of those pain points were the current existing smell sensors were slow in response. They took minutes or even hours to get a response of a reaction of what it's detecting. They weren't specific enough. Like, for example, a smoke detector is not really, it's very looking for, on the grand scale of things, very, very high concentrations, and we can go much lower. And we didn't have the resolution that we needed in the existing sensors. And then finally, there's the last problem we were able to assess is that it's very difficult to break down a smell into its constituent compounds. So if I'm smelling baked bread, I just smell baked bread. I can't dissect that to say this is 10% benzene, 30% toluene, 60% heptane. That's very difficult for humans to. I mean, I can't do that. Maybe you can, but it's.
I was going to say those are. Yeah, I don't want to like rain on your parade, but that's exactly what I was going to decipher there.
Well, I guess you're our new test dummy then, because we're going to use you as our baseline now.
Perfect. I've been called dummy a lot, so that works.
No, and so we looked around and we tried to basically solve those fundamental problems, and we were able to do that. So there's another thing too that we looked at, and we use nature as a big inspiration. Dogs have like 40% of their brains attributed to the sense of smell. I mean, they can track scents that are miles away. Literally, it's insane. Why can't we do that as humans, and why have we not replicated that functionality? As robotics become more prolific and humanoid robots specifically become more of a staple in the field, the advancements there are being made in all these other senses, but not in the sense of smell. And so that's where our particular focus with Theta is we're trying to bring out that field.
Without revealing any of your deep secret information, don't want to get into any legal competitive trouble here. Can you give like a high level explanation of like how smell sensors work?
Sure. So effectively, there's a chemical reaction that occurs, And that chemical reaction sends a voltage, a very specific voltage, back to a processor that basically exceeds a threshold, and then that's our computer logic says, okay, I think that there's this chemical in the air. Each of our sensors is tuned for a specific chemical, and each tuned to a specific reaction, and we can look at all these reactions simultaneously, merge them together to construct this level of intelligence for smell that basically says, okay, this is what the air is characterized at around me. Now, that's maybe, I'm not going to say it's a simple problem, but it's a much simpler problem to just put a device in the air and say, what's around me? What are the constituent parts of the air? How do I track a scent like a dog can? That's a very, very difficult problem. We don't give dogs enough credit, or any other animal like moths or ants that actually navigate through this sense of smell or olfaction or pheromones. It's a very difficult problem, and nature's mastered it. So we've looked at a lot of these natural entities, ants, dogs, moths, to try to get inspiration on how do we go from just ambient air detection to tracking a scent. And it's a very difficult problem, and we've, and especially like with the aerodynamics of the air and how things change with different air currents and everything. If you have a fan in the room, if you have wind, so it's a very difficult problem to solve. That takes a lot of conventional machine learning to kind of really manifest what the sense of smell looks like.
How do you make that jump? Because it's awesome, and it's super fascinating to hear about, like, wow, dogs, and I just learned moths, ants are like so good at smell. They navigate with that. I heard something about like elephants are incredible with that as well, from like long distance smelling, which should be like an Olympic sport, by the way. But yeah. how do you make that jump from like animal smell to like actually infusing those insights into the technology within robots and machines?
So there are several different technologies for the sense of smell, and we try to mirror the exact way that dogs do it, because dogs can detect some chemicals on a part per quadrillion resolution. That's insane. Humans are maybe part per thousand, part per million. They might be able to go a little bit better depending on what depending on what the scent is. Smoke detectors are part per thousand or part per 100 million. So dogs are literally 1 trillion times better or more than smoke detectors. The magnitude's insane, right? So a lot of the existing techniques were maybe good at detecting different compounds in air, but they couldn't get to the resolution dogs can. And dogs, the way they work, they're fundamentally, it's a chemical reaction that sends an electrical signal to their brain. It's called part of it's called the olfactory bulb. And we tried to mirror that exactly with our sensors. Now, we're not quite to the resolution that dogs are with a part per quadrillion sensitivity. We're at a part per trillion sensitivity, but we're several orders of magnitude better than, for example, smoke detectors or other sensing techniques on the market. So there's optical methods where you can actually see the air and be able to break it down into its constituent parts instead of smelling it through a chemical reaction. We have some advantages over that with our sensing techniques, but really we try to replicate what exists in a dog's nose in our sensors at the most fundamental level.
That's a pretty cool resume booster there to say that you're working on that. That's a pretty unique thing to tackle. What are some of the potential use cases for this technology? Like, let's say it's full-fledged, everything is working as you envision. What are some really cool ways that this can enhance our world?
Our current effort right now is to monitor breath. So your breath, when you exhale, gives a multitude of biomarkers or different chemicals that give give a general sense of your well-being. And there's so much data in breath that we can diagnose. So our sensors, literally, we built a breathalyzer that can smell different chemicals in your breath that are indicative of different medical conditions. We started with pneumonia. We started with an influenza, just doing a general wellness check, like if you have a cough, what is it, and being able to kind of assess by just breathing into the device. Now we're going through clinical trials right now for lung cancer detection. So right now for lung cancer, if you want to if you're suspected of lung cancer, you have to go under a surgery to get a biopsy. So they literally cut out a piece of your lung to assess it. That's a very extravagant process, we can allegedly, what we're trying to do is basically show that our device can smell that you have lung cancer and basically replace the need to go under the knife. We have a lot to go before then, and there's a lot of clinical trial data we have to accomplish, but we are effectively, as of today, detecting lung cancer over at various stages across just a breath sample. So there's a whole battery of different domains we can go into with the medical industry, but there's space is another one, agriculture, basically energy, and the energy industry. So for space, there's a big machine called the gas chromatography mass spectrometry machine. Don't need to remember
I don't think you pronounced that correctly, actually.
Yeah. I still don't. I've known what it is for, I think it took me like 18 years to remember.
There's got to be an acronym for that, right?
GCMS is what we call it. Really think about it as a fridge. It's a giant fridge that detects, that sees different compounds within the air. It acts kind of like a nose, but does it through optical the And they send these up to the International Space Station. That's extremely heavy, right? That costs millions of dollars per kilogram. But they use these spectroscopy techniques to look for signs of life on other planets. It's very hard to put that onto a rover, or those techniques onto a rover, and say, go look for signs of life. Our sensors are a couple grams. They take way less power and can detect the same compounds that those machines can. So there's some interesting applications with space, fuel leaks and pipeline detection, and drug detection as well. So at the ports, we're working right now to develop a device that can smell different drugs at ports to try to triangulate them faster than existing methods to help Homeland Security.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that and also doing that. I mean, some of those are literally life-saving potential possibilities here. So it's really cool to think about it in action. I always go back to with AI and futuristic technologies and robotics. I imagine that those like yourself who are running the companies behind it have a hell of an adventure, when you're talking to potential clients of kind of convincing people that, hey, like this is now, like this isn't like too far in the future that this stuff's happening. Like how do you get clients and potential partners on board with like, kind of like those use cases you were just talking about, but like explaining that like these are real things that we should be considering and trying out and investing in right now, not, when we're all 100 and 150, 200 years old.
A lot of it all comes back to the argument for artificial general intelligence. What's going to get us there faster? It's going to happen. It's inevitable. There's so many smart people working on it, but there's not a lot of investment in all 5 senses. There's only about 2 or 3 of them that are getting very high investment. And there's a lot of applications that people don't even think about with the realm of machine smell or machine olfaction. And by us educating them on what's possible with that, to say, hey, look, there's a new sensor out there that kind of makes a lot of these other applications make sense now. Here's what you can do. We open up a lot of possibilities that they didn't even think about before. So a lot of what we do is educational to try to and get people to open up to the fact that there is a whole other realm of artificial intelligence and robotics outside of large language models, outside of chatbots, outside of ChatGPT. Those are all very impressive, but at some point we're going to have to develop some of these other realms just as symmetrically. So a lot of what we do with our clients is education and trying to get them to understand how this is helpful. And a lot of our applications, in addition, aren't solely scent-based or smell-based. We merge with other sensing modalities, for example, cameras or hearing or vision, to try to merge our sensing techniques with them. So like if you can imagine, for example, a dog is primarily using 2, maybe 3 sensing techniques when it tracks a scent. The primary one is its nose, the secondary one is its vision, and the third one is its hearing. Now, if you merge all those together, you get a pretty intelligent being. That's where we can come in, and a lot of our clients are using us as a secondary sensing modality to cover some of the corner cases that, for example, cameras might not be able to cover with their existing techniques. So yeah, to summarize all of this, education is a big part of trying to get our clients to understand what's possible with our sensors.
And then looking back at your journey so far in this space, which they should make a movie about, by the way. But what's the biggest kind of aha moment or insight you've had about building a company and building this technology in this cutting edge space?
It's a lot of different answers I can give to that. I think the biggest thing I've learned, and honestly, probably the biggest aha moment, this comes from like my statistics background, is to make data-driven decisions. As an engineer by trade and by discipline, and all engineers, I would argue, we really want to solve hard problems, and we have our ideas about how we should solve problems. And as a startup, you don't have an infinite amount of time. You're extremely bound by money and extremely bound by time and investment, and you have to act quickly in order to try to materialize something that is actually of value that people want to buy. And if you're an engineer that has his or her own ideas about how to do something, that can waste time. So the best advice I could give, or the best thing I've learned, is to collect as much data as possible about certain hypotheses and to use that data to construct your product. If you think it's a good idea to do machine sensing or machine smell, don't just think it's a good idea and go build a product. Collect a bunch of data, make sure it's possible, make sure the market actually wants it, make sure you can get investment, right? There's some corner cases on this in which you should just, you need to basically act instinctively, but I think data-driven decisions is the biggest component that's helped me and helped our company so far, because we've constructed our argument and we've kind of ruled out all emotional responses and all kind of all the things that we think would be cool to do, and built it off of things people actually want and data that's driven our scientific discoveries and our inventions.
So that was a wonderful segue, because we're going to get to the most data-backed segment in the show's history. Let's wrap up with some rapid-fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get wild. As if we weren't getting wild enough already. If you could be a robot in any movie or TV show in history, who would it be?
Sunny from iRobot.
Ooh, very sunny answer. If you, what would be the sense that you are most fascinated by other than smell?
I think drug detection is very interesting because there's
one of the five senses.
Oh, one of the five senses. Sorry, they're one of the applications. No,
that's interesting as well, though.
Yeah. The sense to be most interested is vision, just because there's so much bandwidth that comes in that we make sense of as humans that we don't really quite understand how we do that yet.
Vision and drug detection, the Kordel France story. Perfect. The memoir. No, but what is at least to your knowledge, the dog breed that has the best sense of smell?
I've been told in my data shows that it's the German Shepherd.
We'll take your word for it.
I could be wrong though. I'm not an expert in that. So might very well be wrong.
Well, once it gets into like the quadrillions of whichever qualifier you mentioned, it becomes pretty tricky. But
yeah.
All right, and then last one, if you could only smell one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Smoke.
Wow, very interesting.
I want to get burned alive.
Very, very practical answer. Well, Kordel, thank you so much. This has just been super fascinating, and the word mind-blowing gets tossed around a lot, but the space you're in truly is. So thanks for all you do and all you do to enhance our world. Where's the best place for people to learn more about Theta Diagnostics, as well as if they want to connect with you online?
I'm most prolific on LinkedIn and then our website as well. We've just did a revamp on our website, and we've got a blog coming that will give some more educational insight on exactly what we're doing and how we're using AI or the sense of smell to solve some problems in AI. So connect with us on our website, or please connect with me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And then last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote, a line, the second most talented dog breed. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever you want. Send us home here, just kind of words to live by to wrap this up.
There is a whole other realm of artificial intelligence outside of chatbots and large language models And machine smell is a very asymmetrically focused realm. Please, let's have some more research in it. Let's have some more investment. Let's have some more invention. Let's try to get that to a point that we can actually materialize the same level of data and technology as other sensing modalities such as vision and hearing.
Bring on the bongos!